Welcome back, everyone. My name is Lucas Miller, and I help busy professionals navigate the world of passive commercial real estate investing. So if getting clarity about what you should and shouldn't focus on appeals to you, stick around. Consider subscribing, put on the notification bell, and stick around and watch some videos because that's going to help you go from no passive income to a whole lot of passive income in a short period of time. Okay, so some of you might not know this, but I have a podcast called Fear-Free Passive Investing. And on the show, we focus on passive commercial real estate investing and the fears that go along with it, right? Fears like jumping in, making that first wire, how do you get started, things like that. So that's the premise of today's video. We're going to talk about the top 5 questions and fears that I hear from potential passive investors and some answers that I usually give to them. So if that sounds like something that's going to interest you, stick around and watch till the very end because I give away something that you should also ask the sponsor too. All right, so let's jump in with question number 1, and it is by far and away the one I get asked most frequently, and that is it too late to get into real estate investing? Yes, I hear it all the time, right? And so my answer is really twofold. One, it depends on what type of real estate investing you're talking about, right? House flipping is not the same as passive commercial real estate investing. So you got to get a little bit of clarification on what exactly you're talking about because different things are happening at different times in the cycle. Commercial real estate's right here, house flipping's over here, rentals are over here. So you really got to clarify what you mean by that. So since we're talking about passive commercial real estate investing, obviously that's what we're going to focus on. So 2020, January 2020, is it too late to get started? No, not at all, right? And it's easy for me to say that, right? Like, of course, I'm going to say that. But let me tell you why I'm going to say that. And take it with a grain of salt, right? Do your own research, look into the metrics that I'm going to talk about, talk to other people. Yeah, figure it out for yourself too. But right now in January of 2020, we're still finding really good deals. Good deals meaning they're cash flowing well, they're providing good returns, they're in desirable places, people want to rent them. We're talking about multifamily here. So, take that with, this is not the same. Again, let's put a big caveat in here. Multifamily is not the same as office, is not the same as mobile home parks, it's not the same as office or hospital office space. So again, different real estate sectors are at different points in the market. You got to be aware of what you're investing in. So multifamily, is it too heated? Nah, frankly, it's not. There's a lot of people who say they're investing in real estate. There's a lot of people who want to get involved in real estate, but there's very few actually taking action. So it's not too late to get involved in real estate. Another key item you can look at is banks are still really lending on multifamily. Banks love it, the lenders love it, the government loves it. Frankly, most institutional money is being held in some form of multifamily right now. It's really one of the safest commercial real estate sectors you could be in. So the same things still apply, right? You got to find a good deal. You got to find a good sponsor. You got to find good people you want to partner with, and you have to find the right areas. Now, that's the case for every time, right? Right after a recession, you still got to figure that thing out. That being said, it's probably likely we're moving into more of a correctional phase in commercial real estate, especially multifamily, which doesn't mean you're going to lose money. Like, that's a very important point. But all it means is that you got to be really specific and really, you have to pay attention to who you're partnering with, where the deals are at, what the return structures are like, and what the debt and the financing looks like on those deals. Okay, question 2. This might seem like an obvious one if you're not new here. If you are new here, stick around. But what is passive investing, right? Some people just don't know that. They hear me talk about it all the time, but they're like, I just don't understand what you're talking about. Passive investing simply means that you are giving up control of your investment income to somebody else so that they can be a financial steward for you. They have a fiduciary responsibility to keep you informed of what that is, to make sure that they're using their funds legally and correctly and ethically. But basically, you are giving them control of your money in exchange for total passivity, right? Almost total passivity, right? You still have a little bit of work on your end, but that's what I mean by passive investing. You are giving, especially in our sector, you are giving me principal that I will use towards equity for a deal, meaning down payment. It will mean construction costs or rehab costs, various fees for closing loans and things like that. So your money goes to the equity side and it's pooled with other investor money, sometimes our money, and we buy buildings with it. So that's what I mean by passive income. All right, number 3, what is the minimum investment? I get this question all the time, and I give you the answer of that is so frustrating for a lot of people, and it depends, right? I know it frustrates the heck out of me too, but it really does depend, right? For me, my personal preference, my minimum is usually around $75,000. Now, we've taken $50,000 before, we've taken $25,000 before, but what that means is each deal is going to be different. If I only have to raise $1 million and I've already raised, a lot of it, say 750,000 or something, I might consider a $25,000 investment. Now, if I have to raise $10 million or something and you're asking me to come in at 25 grand, I'm going to say no thanks. Frankly, no. Our minimum is probably going to be 100,000 at that point. And so it just really depends on each deal, but a good number to budget for if you're trying to save up and you're trying to figure out how much you should set aside, just go ahead and plan on 50 to 75 grand. Okay, question number 4 is how do the sponsors get paid? And what I mean by sponsors is the general partners or the active investors, GPs for short for general partners. You as an investor would come in as an LP, limited partner. So we're talking about the general partners now. So how do the general partners make money? From a couple different ways, right? So like we were talking about earlier, we have an equity structure in this deal, in most deals. My personal preference for equity splits is 70-30, 70% going to the investor, 30% to the general partners. Now that's subject to change if you're watching this 5 years down the road and you're like, hey, what's this? I thought you said 70-30. That's just January 2020 where we're at right now. Likely if you see an offering from me, it's 70-30 split, 30% to the general partners. So that means we get 30% of the cash flow, 30% of the sale proceeds, basically 30% of the entity. And that does not take into account any sort of preferred return. And if you're not familiar what a preferred return is, I will do a video on it. And if I do it quickly, it'll be linked up here. But a preferred return is essentially the first X amount of percent, right? Each deal is different, usually somewhere around 6 to 8%. Usually the first 6 to 8% of money that the property generates goes directly to the investors, and we don't split that. Right, so that's a little bit of a cushion for investors, or a little bit of a breather, right? So if you're making this preferred return, we're not taking any money unless we're going above and beyond, right? Until your principal is returned in most cases. So 30% of the equity is what we get. Also, we have acquisition fees, which are generally 1 to 2% of the sale price of the asset that we get paid to at closing or shortly after. And all that means is we're getting paid for the work we've already put into the deal, right? We obviously can't be paid for our hundreds of hours probably combined of that go into closing a deal. So that's paying us catching us up basically. We have an asset management fee sometimes, and that just means the long-term ongoing fee to manage the building. And some operators do what's called a disposition fee. A disposition fee is a sale fee, basically like maybe another acquisition fee on the back end for going through a sale. I don't do those, so I can't really speak too much to those. And that's really it, right? Equity, a little bit of cash flow, and an acquisition fee at the front end, and an asset management fee basically to keep the lights on. It's not very much. And so those are a couple ways that we get paid on a regular basis for multifamily deals. All right, question number 5, and this is a good one, is really how am I protected? Now, this question comes in a couple different ways, like how is my money safe? But I'm just paraphrasing, how am I protected? So just to start, I want to clarify that because most people don't know this, I want to clarify that the most money you can lose is your principal. And I know that sounds like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of money. And it is, right? Of course. But once you realize you can't be sued, or you can't, the general partners aren't going to go after you, you can't be sued by the lender or the bank or whatever, the most money you can lose is your principal. Now, again, that's a lot of money, but it's not going to get worse. So that's a really important thing. There is, and I want to take a small caveat and say, there is something called a capital call, where if the property is not doing so well or there's a really big unexpected expense, the partners usually have the right to call some additional capital or basically raise more money. And in my case, and this is not the case for everyone, excuse me, I'm battling a cold here, but this is not the case for everyone, but capital calls are voluntary. But you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? The capital call is voluntary, but your share will be diluted if you choose not to invest. And that's just the effect of cutting the pie into more pieces, right? Yours will get smaller. So beyond that, there's no way you're going to have to lose more money. So you're protected that way. You're also protected in a couple different ways. One is the SEC governs a lot of what I do, the Securities and Exchange Commission. They govern a lot of what I as an operator can and cannot do. So you have that safety of the federal government watching over our shoulder, making sure we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's, and making sure that you as the consumer or the investor are protected. Now, again, they're not going to be looking at every single deal. So you still need to do a little bit of due diligence on the front end if you are a sponsor, basically making sure that the people you're getting involved with are ethical. And that's a very important thing to understand. And that's really it. Those are the questions that I get asked most often. And of course, little variations here and there are going to change my answers. And if you have a question that I didn't get to, make sure to put it down in the comments and I will reply to it, I promise. And so I told you there was one more question that you should be asking your sponsor. And this is one that nobody ever asks, but it always comes up when people don't read the PPM or the private placement memorandum. At least in my deals, distributions don't start for the first, to be conservative, call it 6 to 9 months. That's a long time. So the question I want you to ask your sponsor is, when do my disbursements start? When am I projected to get my first check? Every sponsor is going to be different. Some are doing monthly distributions, some are quarterly, some might start distributions right away. I think that's incredibly risky, and we can get into that later. But I hold off as a very conservative runway to build up a little bit of capital in our operating budget, in our reserve budget, in all these different ways that I can secure that cash flow, because once they start, you can't really stop distributions. That signals something's wrong. Your return for year one does start accruing in day one. You just don't see your first check for 6 to 9 months. So that's an important question. I want you to ask your sponsor, when do I get my first check? Or when am I projected to get my first check? All right, thanks again. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Again, if you did like it, make sure to leave a like down there. It really helps me out, and it tells me if I'm doing good or if I'm doing bad. So also subscribe, put the notification bell, and send this to someone you think might be interested in passive investing. Go ahead and send them the channel, send them my email address, whatever it is, help them out, help them get started on their passive investing journey. If you could do that, I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to talk to you again next time.